I'm standing now on Highway 1 at a spot that holds um, the turning point of my entire life. We had come from Brisbane that direction and we were headed to the Sunshine Coast in that direction. As we came down that hill, we got to about here and the rear left-hand tire of my car exploded. And about the bottom of the hill down here, after the car had swerved one way and I tried to catch it and it swerved the other way, the car flipped and rolled down that road there to pretty much at the bottom of the gully there. There is now that fence um, guarding that centre that wasn't there. It was just bare in the middle, but we flipped something like 20 times and then it ended up at the bottom of the hill.
None of us are going to get through life without having moments that we wrestle with our reality deeply. For some of us, those moments will be tragic. In fact, I doubt any of us will fail to experience tragedy at some point in our lives. I want to share with you today my life journey that has led me to believe so strongly the things that I believe. When I was in Bible college training for ministry, the very first message I ever got to preach, I preached from Hebrews chapter 4. And the verse I'm going to reflect on today is, or at least have informed our services, now we who have believed enter that rest. I'm going to unpack this much more fully next week. But there is this link that speaks directly to the struggles that we will have in our lives and within ourselves. This passage makes a link that I saw for the very first time. I'd never heard anyone specifically point in that direction, but I can't escape that link. And it is that link that started a chain of events that leads us to being together in this service. It is that link that forms the foundation when you start. I'm going to share a little bit on that link at the end of this time in preparation for next week. But right now, I want to turn to my story. So I grew up in the 60s. You don't have to look very deeply at those photos to recognize that that's true, but it's right there on one of those photos. It says Christmas 1962. I was 11 months old at that stage. Grew up in a happy home with a happy family. Mum and Dad were in ministry. Dad was the consummate technician. There was no problem that was physical that Dad could not solve. So childhood was good. That photo with the koala is my best friend from my childhood, Reg Goring. And whenever we get together, even today, we experience significant depth to our relationship. I love Reg. Don't get to see him anywhere near as much as I'd like to. When I was about 11, I was very aware that God was asking me to be a pastor. And I felt like that was the purpose for my life. As I moved through my teenage years, I was very aware that was where God was leading me to. But my teenage years were unremarkable. They were just being a teenager. And you can see how much effort I put into that process. You don't get muscles like that from doing nothing. Well, actually, that's exactly how you get muscles like that. But the reality is, as I journeyed through my teenage years, I I came to the point where I was at the end of my school time and ready for the next step in my life. I sure wish the person that took that photograph on the left-hand side there had taken long enough to remind me to straighten my tie, but there it is. I came to the end of school and I did not want to do any more study. I'd had enough. I now recognize that the reason that I had enough at that point and didn't want to do any more study, we didn't do gap years in that time. You either went on to study or you did something else. But I recognize that now, from today's perspective, what I struggled with was shame. My shame was driven by the fact that I processed everything through a brain that was miswired. My attention deficit meant that I was never paying enough attention to get what needed to be done clearly, and I could never focus long enough to get what was done. I was always doing everything at the last minute, was always making excuses, always scrambling, and always feeling like I was inadequate. Shame gripped my heart, and I went into the workforce. After a little while, someone said to me, you should think about going into the police force. That thought connected for me. And after some processing, I decided that was what I'd like to do. So at 18 years of age, I applied to enter into the police force. I went through the selection process. And in my interview, I was told that I had performed in the whole process very well. And even though I was considered to be on the young side for entry into the police academy, I would be in the next intake. And I suspected that would be about 4 to 6 weeks. But day after day, week after week, month after month began to pass with no letter coming from the police academy to say that my intake was underway. I became deeply frustrated, deeply annoyed at life. I felt like my life had been moving step by step through this process where God was touching me and life was relatively good. And that was all preparation for my going in a ministry. I had just decided that I was going to take this period of time where I would live life, get some money together, get some experience together before I would become a pastor. And it seemed to me in that moment that God was punishing me because I didn't make that step fast enough. And yet when I looked back across the process, I prayed all the right prayers, I asked all the right questions, and I felt like God had told me that he wanted me to go in the police force. And now we're in this process day after day, going to the letterbox, looking for that letter that would come to say I was in the police academy. It never came. I decided at some point that I'd drive trucks for a living. That seemed like a fun thing I could do while I was waiting for this letter to come. I called the police academy a number of times. They told me, yes, I would be in the next intake. That happened about 3 or 4 times, but the intake never came along. During that period of my life, I recognized that I began to form an understanding that God is an arbitrary and distant God that is only concerned with getting us to make the right decisions at the right time in the right place. And he's manipulating all of our circumstances to get us there. But I was in this break period. I wanted to be able to have that part of my life before being normal was no longer an option for me, and I would enter into the pastoral ministry. During that time, I met a young lady. A friend of mine introduced us. Her name was Kay, and Kay lit up my life. I loved being with Kay. Well, as time went on, that letter ultimately did come, and I was ushered into the police force. About the same time that that letter came and gave me my instructions, I discovered something. Kay actually lived most of her life on the other side of the law from the direction that I was taking. She'd been on the streets since she was 16, and she was making the best that she could do with it. And that kind of dilemma and my own desire to recognize that I actually did want to follow God. I'd come to the place where the only way I could get God to give me the future that I wanted was to obey him the way he desired me to. And so with this conflict in my heart, I broke up with Kay, and I felt really, really bad, but I felt that's also the right thing to do. Well, I got into the police force. Studies went well. I was surprised at how well I could do. Everything I was doing pretty well at. And then there came this day where it was announced that our festival, the Brisbane Festival for that year, called Warana, in the parade that they always had as a part of the Warana Festival, the police force was entering a float. I think they always did, but this year the float was going to be themed the police force in 50 years. The police force in 50 years is in 2032, and that's not far away. But you can see from this photo on the left-hand side that their understanding of what the police uniform would look like in that period was heavily dominated with the ideas of space travel. And we had this space-aged suit. We aren't nearly there yet. But I was selected to be the lead police representative on that float. It was an incredible honor, and I was so excited. And that was such a great day. When we did all the things we needed to do on that float, and it came to the end, there's a big celebration at the end. I actually got to meet and give a lift in my car one of the greatest football stars, rugby league football stars that has ever lived. And it was such a huge day. A few weeks later, a week or so later, this second photo was taken. It was a Sunday afternoon. People had come back from church to our home, as they did, because mum and dad are in the ministry. And every Sunday they would come home to our place. And mum said, "Why don't you put your police uniform on? That's the uniform for being a training probation officer. And let me get a photograph." So we took a photograph. So there I am in my police uniform. That's Brad beside me. And I wonder if you can guess who that is upon my knee there. That is Brett. And so it was a very special moment where we took that photo. A couple of days before that photo was taken, I had reconnected with Kay Dobson. Kay Marie Dobson was living in the Valley, and which is near the city, near the downtown area of Brisbane, the CBD. And I had reestablished contact with her. I decided to go in and visit her on I had an afternoon off, and the week ahead there was a number of events on that I thought I'd like to ask Kay to come with me. I was now at the academy. We were training, but it was the Commonwealth Games was coming on Thursday the following week of September, and I had I bought 2 tickets to the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games. The Commonwealth Games is identical to the Olympic Games, except it's exclusive. Only Commonwealth countries, the former British Empire, is allowed to be a part of the Commonwealth Games. And they were in Brisbane that year, and I had tickets to the opening ceremony because we, as training police officers, were rostered to support the police during that providing security for the Commonwealth Games. So I had my roster, and the following Tuesday I had off, and the following Thursday I had off. Thursday I would go to the Commonwealth Games. I would like to take Kay with me. On the Tuesday before that, I decided I'd take Kay to the Sunshine Coast. And on the Saturday before that, I asked her if she would like to go to a youth service with me. She agreed to go to all three things with me. It seemed like we were reconnected and life was good and life was going on as I had hoped. She came to the youth service with me, and after the youth service, we sat in my car for hours till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning talking about what it meant to be a Christian. And she was very, very keen to understand what I was talking about. The following Tuesday, we were headed up to the Sunshine Coast, and I had come to a decision in my heart on that day. I would ask Kay if she would want to be a Christian, and if she said yes, I would ask her to marry me. And if she said yes to that, it would change my life. On that trip to the Sunshine Coast, the events that you saw in the video happened. Kay and her sister, who was with us, and her sister's boyfriend, Kay and Diana, were killed in that accident. This is the car wreck following the accident. And for our North American viewers, so you can get acclimatized, there's the driver's wheel on the other side of the car from what you're expecting. I thought I should show you that just so your mind gets to the right place, because you can see how crushed the car is on my side of the car. My neck was broken in 2 places. My arm was broken in 2 places. My ribs were cracked, broken in multiple places. I had punctured lung. And that was a result of the roof coming down on top of me. Kay and Diana were sitting in the back seat and were thrown from the car because neither of them were wearing seatbelts, and they were killed. My friend walked out without hardly a scratch. So from that moment, the long journey ahead began. It seemed to me, as I lay in my hospital bed, that God had reinitiated the process that he had engaged in me in my whole life, and that was offer really good, and when I got settled in that really good place, take it away. Hadn't been lots of moments in my life prior to that time that were that significant, but it felt like that was the routine that was established. After 2 years of waiting to get in the police force, that was now taken away from me because I was dismissed from the police force as a result of the car accident. Lying in hospital, my world is fallen apart. You can see here in this close-up photo that I have metal pins screwed into my skull to immobilize my neck so that it won't move and it'll have a chance to heal. While I was lying in that bed, well-meaning people would come and say to me, Roland, God will work this together for good. You know what the word of God says. They'd say to me, Job had to put up with great suffering in order to get to where God wanted him to be. And my thoughts were, I never asked to be Job. I don't want to be Job. I also thought to myself, if God's working all of this for good in my life, how did he make that choice? How did he choose to kill my girlfriend so that my life would be good? Why didn't he choose to kill me so that her life could be good? And those questions haunted me. So this is a photograph of me with my full body cast on after I got out of hospital. Just ignore that metal on my chest. Maybe one day I'll tell that story. The day came when the plaster came off, and Mum, I'm sure, will testify to the smell that existed in that moment. Went and got cleaned up, ready for the journey that was ahead. A couple of months later, it was my 21st birthday, and you'll see me there smiling, but inside I was dying. Bitterness began to grip my heart. I wanted nothing of the future that didn't contain the girl that I'd fallen in love with. The future didn't mean anything to me. My world was overwhelmed with bitterness. In fact, I would say I hated God, never stopped believing in God. But I determined that God was fickle, manipulative, and destructive, that he had something he wanted our lives to be for, and he would kill to get it. And I was not going to cooperate. After about 2 years of living in that space, the bitterness was so harsh that I could hardly stand it. Got into my room one evening and said to me, in fact, I recognized it was Jesus. He said to me, I want you back. And I said, I can't come back. Look at me. And he said, I want you back. And finally, I got to that place where Steve was talking about last week. I started negotiating with God. I said, God, if you can make something of my life, I'll come back. The bitterness was gone in an instant. In fact, for the first time in years, I experienced a joy and a hope. Within a month or two, I'd enrolled in Bible college and was beginning to study for the ministry. It wasn't very long. In fact, I think it was probably the first day I met this beautiful young girl, fell deeply in love with her, and our lives became a part of each other's journey. It is in my relationship with Emmy that I discovered what love really is. It is with my relationship with Emmy that I discovered who God really is. And Emmy walked with me through those days. And I'm sure that if it wasn't for Emmy, the deepest struggles of my life may never have been addressed. Emmy wasn't someone that God brought into my life to replace Kay. Emmy was the presence of God in my life constantly. Our lives began to unfold and we moved into ministry, and it was good. Oh, I love that photo there on the right. That's the three sisters, my wife, Cami, and Mum. Looks like she could easily be one of the sisters. So life has a way of doing what life does, right? It comes together and it's good. And all the while, I was beginning to explore ever deeper what it means to be transformed by love. I still had a long way to go. I still had many struggles to deal with. See, my problem wasn't just in the way that I was framing and believing God. My problem was also in the way my mind had established the way of thinking. And so there were many, many times, and in some spaces, it's still true today. My mind acts out of the shame, the brokenness, the feeling inadequacy, the not good enough space in my life. And I labored in ministry into that place, but I knew the truth. I knew the reality that God was speaking to me about. It was the link that I discovered in that passage in Hebrews. You see, when the writer of Hebrews says there remains a rest for the people of God, or make every effort to enter that rest, he links it with this vital principle. Rest is about identity. He establishes this rest that is available to us on God's identity. And when we know who God is, then we will know who we are. And I saw that link in that verse, and it started this journey that ultimately I began to realize that my struggle is with shame, that I am overwhelmed with my own sense of worthlessness. But if God really loves us, and he does, then that love has got to be a response to shame. And as I processed that, I began to realize more and more and more the pieces that come together. And I'll talk about those pieces next week. But I met a man online when the internet was very brand new. I discovered a Nazarene chat page, a Church of the Nazarene chat page. And on that chat page, I met a guy named Brad Mercer. And we started to talk together. And as I started to share with him the things that I was beginning to believe, he became very excited. And at some point, as our lives became closer and closer, he said, why don't you move to Texas and we can plant a church together? that is built in this space. And out of those conversations that took place and lots of prayer, Emmy and I decided that we would move to Frisco in Texas, north of Dallas, and New Start came into being. The pieces of New Start. Actually, I wanted to show you this. This on the left-hand side is where where the New Start Church first started to meet. After a few months, after about a year, we had grown enough that we were able to take over the offices in the next door. And that top photo is us fitting out the space for the church expansion. I do happen to say the first photo is on a Sunday morning. The second photo, I think it was a Saturday afternoon. So that was not the clothes that our worship leaders brought to church, came to church in. But it was there at New Start, trying to start that church, that I came to the awareness that there was a deep and profound struggle still at work in my life that I had not yet addressed, and it was around this issue of identity. And next week, I'm going to share how those connections came together and how I was reminded of the link between rest and identity.